everyone. Thank you for joining me again after a couple of weeks after our last episode. I'm so glad to be with you again and have an exciting conversation. I'll just wait for just a little bit, probably a few seconds, and not even minutes, till we have more people to join and till we invite my honorable guest today, my dear friend, Soo. Here you go. I'll just add him. Hi, Soo. Can
Hi,
you
hi
see
Olga.
me?
How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm pretty good. Am I a bit
That's
dark?
good. You are a bit dark, yes.
Okay, maybe because you're a bit light. So I'll put more light
Oh,
on here.
sorry.
Okay, that's better. No?
That's better. You can see me well. I can see you well. I can hear you well. Fantastic. And great to see you.
Happy to see you too.
Yes, yes. Well, Sue, uh, thank you so much for joining me today. I will say a few words about the conversations with Olga. I will also tell our listeners, our viewers, a little bit about you, just a very short bio, and then we'll just talk like we always do for
Okay,
years.
that's
Okay?
nice. Right.
Great. So I'll start. Today is our episode number 29 at the Conversations with Olga that I've started as an IGTV YouTube series last year, actually, yes, last year during the circuit breaker, with the goal to introduce my dear friends and people whom I've met throughout this year, throughout my career, to the multicultural Singaporean and global community. And this platform I found is very easy to follow and accessible, and that's why I have so many interesting people who got to know my friends, and my friends got to know my amazing guests. Uh, the main mission and hope for the session is to inspire and cultivate a more diverse and inclusive community. And today is my honor to introduce the guest number 29, Soo Chan. Soo Chan, as I usually call you Soo Khian, but or Soo. I will be very brief and saying a few words about you, Soo, and before we move with our fascinating discussion. Soo is the founding principal and design director of SCDA, a design studio seamlessly integrating architecture, interior design, landscape architecture, and product design to create holistic spatial experiences. SCDA has offices in Singapore, Shanghai, and New York. The firm has designed in over 70 locations across Asia, Africa, Europe, Oceania, and North America. Soo was the recipient of 3 American Institute of Architects AIA International and AIA New York Awards for Architecture and 3 Royal Institute of British Architects International Prizes, just to name a few, and the President's Design Award. And of course, a number of others that I'm not going to mention, otherwise I'll sit here for half an hour just mentioning your awards. You are a founding partner of Construction Declare and the design partner of U.S. Environmental Group, Parley for the Oceans. Soo, you obtained your Master's of Architecture degree in Yale. In addition to your design practice, you're a professor of architecture at the National University of Singapore, and you taught and lectured at several international architecture schools. So here you go, and we will of course continue on your achievements and your biography in general. Thank you again very much for joining me today at Conversations with Olga. We have known each other, I think, for almost 18 years or something like that. You probably know, you remember better when your first book was launched. And I have to have a disclaimer. Actually should inform, I should say, that you are one of the very few friends and clients whom I've met during your first launch of the book, who is even more detailed oriented and even very more particular about every minute element than me. And I thought I was really super detailed and sometimes a little bit over, but you are definitely overshining me in that. I would like to start with your background and the choices you have made, and not to worry, I will only keep it to the professional choices. So, you were born in Penang, known as the Pearl of Orient for some of our listeners from all around the world who haven't been there. Penang is famous for its soft, incredibly beautiful beaches, and of course regarded as the capital of Malaysia. Um, so I want to ask you a question. If somebody asks you to tell about Penang in one sentence, what this sentence would be? For me, it would be food and beautiful beaches, but I would like to hear from you.
I think it is really multicultural in a way that's not a melting pot. I mean, the races are integrated, and it's an easy place to grow up in. And in particular, when I was there, and it's also very cultural because it's one of the British Strait settlements. So in a way, it has a rather international influence, but also very locally grounded.
That's good. That's almost a little bit more than one sentence, but perfect. Very short and very precise and enticing. And yet you attended one of the best schools for architecture, Yale University. Very, very long way from Penang. I would love to hear, how did you end up in the US and in particular at the Yale University?
Well, it's 1980. I went to a high school in Penang called Penang Free School, and it's not free, but free thinking. And it was established, one of the oldest schools in Asia. It was established in 1816 by the British colonial powers. And then at that point, I think a lot of people in Malaysia were going to the Commonwealth countries like Britain or Australia for studies. But I had a few friends that went to America, and I went to approach some teacher. We have a vocational guidance department, which is just a small room with some books. Did my research, went to the embassy to get more books, and kind of picked out the school, and got on a plane and went there. It's my first time going to America, and it literally was a culture shock. I parachuted into the Midwest, and that was it.
Well, I can imagine a culture shock, but what I also, heard so many times that actually architecture is considered one of the most difficult degrees to obtain. I think it's actually rated number 3 after the chemistry and medicine in terms of length and in terms of intensity. What are your views on that, and how did you end up actually in such a difficult to learn such a difficult task or profession?
Well, I knew I wanted to do something creative, and architecture was acceptable because it's traveled between science and the arts. But really, it takes a long time to know what architecture really means, right?
Yes.
And for me, I spent 7 years studying architecture. Started with liberal arts, and then I had my professional degree.
Yeah.
And another 3 to 4 years of internship before I got my license. So that's like a 10-year journey, right? And in some sense, you need to be an all-rounder to be a good architect, right? And nothing comes easy. Well, yeah, you may have a sensitive eye, but nothing like practice and practice 10,000 hours. Plus, you need to be a combination of a creative person and a salesperson. You need to deal with people, you need to deal with organization. And so indeed, it's a very wide-ranging set of skills that is needed. But you don't have to be all of the above. As an architect, we can choose to be in one area. You could be in management, or you could be even in design, or even administratively in contracts.
But I also, from what I understand, and I know that you talk a lot to young people who are aspiring architects who apply to Yale, and I believe you have to be all of the above what you just mentioned, but also good in math, and you have enough understanding of geometry and trigonometry and algebra, and to plan out the dimensions and etc. That's something that I would definitely be lost at. So for me, even to dream, even though I love this as a profession, would be absolutely out of the question. So is it correct that you really have to be very good in math and algebra and geometry?
Not exactly. I don't think you need to be really good in the sciences. You need to have good problem-solving skills. But for me, if you're going to be a design architect, a connection to sensitivity to the environment, a connection to what's dear to you is important. Being able to feel the environment is very important. Yeah. And where you draw inspirations from is even more important. So your learning process does not stop in school, right?
Yes,
school gives you the basics, as you mentioned, geometry, structures, mechanical systems, but you really don't need to be good at any of that. You just need to know a little bit, and you can hire a specialist. So in many ways, the architect's role is the composer and the conductor in the orchestra. You need to bring in many, many people to make your vision come through, right?
Great. Yes, and of course, and we'll talk about your daily routine a little bit later, because I know that it's extremely intense work and everything. But for now, I would like to chat about your journey and as an architect and your projects. You are considered one of the greatest architects of our time by many. And please tell us about your firm, CDA, and some of the projects you have developed in all these years.
Well, I need to start a bit further down, you know, because I think your childhood experiences shape who you are. And it took me a long time to realize that certain things influence you more than other things. Sometimes that realization comes late in life, but I realized that the early years of me growing up in Penang actually was a key factor. You know, I lived in a compound, the Khu Kong Si, which is actually a UNESCO heritage site, and it was a clan house with families, you know, in shop houses around sort of a clan community temple, right?
That's wonderful. It's a community feel for it.
Right. Great. No, but it's more about the sense of how the spaces work and how people interact. And I remembered that I was very interested in the environment. And the house I grew up with have actually two air wells, because it's a long shop house. And I think that must have kind of piqued my interest in architecture. You know, even as a young boy, I would remember the light and darkness in that house, rain coming into the middle of the courtyard, the smell of rain, the sound of rain, the qualities of the water filling up the courtyard and disappearing. I was fascinated with those sorts of phenomenological experiences, so to speak. And then you go to school and you did what you had to do. But at the end of the day, I realized that my journey to be an architect would be to be an architect that could shape human experiences that connect to how you feel, rather than be just a formal architect. But that journey, once I realized I wanted to be an architect when I was 12, until I finished, it's a long way. And it never fails to surprise me that architecture is unidimensional. It's not what we think it is.
Yes. And it's definitely felt through every project, that I've been to, I've visited, and I've stayed at, and it's definitely this connection, the human connection with the nature, with the feel is incredible. It's complete immersion, and you know, your projects were published extensively and were presented at the Venice Biennale, I believe, in a few times. So because they're really, really incredibly special, and definitely the approach is very holistic. And what can you tell us a little bit about? Well, you actually did mention about your approach. What is your just now? What is your creative process like?
Well, you know, the architectural journey is one of discovery. Once you acquire the knowledge, the hard skills of being an architect, right? There's a period of discovery. And depending on where you work and who you work with, you explore what you believe in. And it takes a few years. It's much like growing up until you find, hopefully early, your own voice. And I was lucky to realize very quickly what architecture wants to be for me. And I started by doing houses. lot of private homes.
Yeah.
And because there were so many of them and they were small, I had a chance to kind of test different ideas. And so after a while, when I had SCBA quite early, I settled on a design language. And this design language is not just a feeling of space, but how you put together the language of architecture. And why is that important? It is important because you need to communicate with the people that you work with, your own studio, and you need to orchestrate so that everybody comes together in a very clear way.
Yes.
And the language of architecture that I chose to adopt has a lot to do with engaging the environment, bringing in outdoors, and then being able to bring in all the way down to product design, right?
Absolutely.
And for that to happen, you need to kind of go very wide, wide, and gradually specialize and get down to the small details.
Absolutely. It's I can totally relate to this project because my creative project process is very similar to yours. And what are the very much of a recognizable signature, signature Soo Chan's elements of? How can people recognize your projects?
Well, on a superficial level, you can say you recognize certain elements, screens, box, this and that. But really, I think the recognition of my project, I hope, is walking through it. It's really the choreography of three-dimensional space, you know? And that's why I think it doesn't quite come through in representation, the feeling of the project, you know? If you actually walk through and use one of the project, Olga, you've been to Suri, Bali.
Yes.
You can't capture that connection to nature.
Yes.
And because the project's not about the building, it's about the spaces in between the building.
It's about the energy that
the energy that you
give. Absolutely, that you feel. Oh, yes. And I know how incredibly detailed you are. For example, in Suri, Bali, the first time when I came years ago, I saw this connection between even sand and the walls and the color of the plants. And of course, you're so good in lighting. It's incredible. So I definitely feel your signature in every single project that I've seen or stated. How does it personally feel when you go around or you visit the cities or you go in Singapore even or anywhere your projects are? How does it feel to look at your creations? How does it make you feel personally?
Well, I remember the early projects. I get very excited with adding a room onto a building or renovating a shop house. But honestly, it feels great to see a project that people can enjoy, very simply put. But because you are a professional, a creator, there's a detachment as well. I would think that I should be a bit more excited about it, but because you are so intimately involved in the creative process and you know all the difficulties that you need to encounter, by the time you get to the finish line, it's not as if you pull apart a curtain and you see this project. The process will be like a 3-year process or even longer.
Yes.
And so you've been very much immersed in it on a regular basis. But when it comes out, it's much more like, I imagine, I haven't done it, like birthing a baby. You're carrying it for a long time.
Yes.
And now it's out. And that's the connection to projects.
Yes.
There's some projects that I like, some projects that I don't like, but they're all part of your creative process, and you have to take responsibility for it.
Absolutely. Yes, I feel exactly the same. Every project that I do, no matter how big or small, I give birth to every single project, and this is the feeling of the whole journey till the project gets born. And of course, you worked and have projects in over 70 locations around the world. It's incredible, really. And I would love all our friends from around the world who are listening to us today, who joined us today, to hear about your Suri brand projects. I remember years ago how the brand was born, and I have been privileged to launch some of the projects for you, or with you, I should say, like for example, Suri Bali and the incredible project for Suri Highline in New York, which even for me, I grew up in New York, who opened up that whole area of New York through your eyes. So can you please tell us a little bit about it? What does Suri stand for?
Suri is amalgamation of my name, Soo, and Ling's name, my wife, Sri. And it's been very much part of our journey through a period of our lives, wanting to first build a house, eventually became a full-fledged hotel. And the Suri brand I created was an adjunct to SCDA. SCDA is business to business. You're in the process of working with developers, with clients, realizing the hardware of architecture, right? It's the shell. But no experience is really complete without the software of service. With a hotel and with Suri, you could program, you could make a spa and not end there, right? You could say, how do you operate the spa and what kind of experience do you want your guests to have? So once you get into the Suri brand, it allows you to design everything else, uniforms, collaterals, everything, cutlery, plates, as much as you want to. So that's how I started with the Suri brand.
Yes, thank you. And this is very important to me and in general. And I talk about it quite a bit through my events and through some of the conversations and interviews and things like that in my upcoming book as well, actually. I talk about cultural education and the importance of bringing hospitality to the highest level. And this is exactly what you've mentioned. I think it's extremely important, and this is how I believe the Suri projects all over the world or wherever they are actually expressing the notion of the high level hospitality all around. So what do guests should expect when they stay or visit or consider buying some of the Suri project? Buying into some of the Suri projects, I should say.
Well, I think I have to start with location. So far we have 4 locations. One in Bali, which is very tropical, cultural. Now we have New York, which is metropolis. We're now in Wyoming.
Yes, we will talk about Wyoming in a few seconds, because I want to ask you.
But Wyoming, it's just big nature with wild animals. Then we have Niseko, which is ski. And I picked those locations because it stretches your experience of nature. But more importantly, they have culture in each place.
Yes.
So cultural integration means that the hotel need to be immersed in the local community.
Yes.
You need to get the local people to join and preserve the culture. Like in Suri Bali, we have dance schools. We have a lot of experiences that we bring into the hotel. So the hotel is a microcosm, a safe space for experience of, for example, wild nature, right?
Yes, yes.
For that to happen, the programming and the journeys need to happen. So it's not so much about the hardware. Hardware and design is great, but it's also programming, taking the guests out into different settings and making them feel very safe and very comfortable.
Yes, very true. And I know through your so many projects that you involved and you developed a number of initiatives, a number of the programs that are very much geared towards sustainability and geared toward the nature initiatives or cultural programs. For example, the project with Tenda and Barley for the Oceans and Plastic for Rice and etc. And Turtles releases as well. What is your take and why are these projects are so special for you? And what do you think about being sustainable in the world that we live in? What does it mean for you?
Sustainability has been a buzzword for the last many years, especially for designers. But getting to the true heart of what green is, without greenwashing and recycling some wood and calling sustainability is very important, because I believe it's not just the eco-environmental sustainability, cultural sustainability, not ruining the culture of the place, but reinforcing it and sustaining the community. So the places that I chose, for example, Bali and Wyoming has local communities. One would have in the history indigenous Native American Indians.
Yes.
The other one is just Bali. An example would be like over the period of pandemic, you know, what you do for your immediate surrounding village and your staff is equally important. So we need to generate to support the ecosystem long term. Because if the village fails, the hotel will not succeed. So, you know, we created, we try to stimulate to create jobs like Tenda. Tenda is a container hotel that's carbon zero. And we kind of tested it out, and it's a container with a huge solar roof with water collection. And, you know, we got the local villagers to help to build them, right? And then we also need to sustain the farming community by pledging to buy rice and then maybe distribute them for exchange of plastics. So it's circular. And at the end of the day, it's long term, right? So it's not about just trying to make the hotel carbon zero by adding some solar panels, but really a process of education. And I learned, I think we can't do it alone. So I've associated with Palais for the Oceans in New York. And they was kind of supported initiatives and through dialogue and through different working together. I think we're going to continue that in all our Suri projects.
Yes, it's incredible. It's, as you said, it's absolutely well-rounded, and it comes from education and care. And I know what a caring person you are. So it's kudos to you for this incredible initiatives. And of course, Wyoming. I only heard about it from you. I don't know many details, but you just described why Wyoming attracted to you. But still, why Wyoming? How did you even pick up the place?
When I look for a site, it's about connection to place. And Wyoming came about during the lockdown. Everybody just dreamed of being somewhere. And I told one of my sons, I say, help me look for places in Montana, Wyoming. I knew that going out the wild, I wanted to do something in the wild, you know, rugged territory. And we chanced upon this beautiful site, 162 acres. And we just bought it sight unseen. And then I spent 3 days on site trying to absorb the energy of the place, the river, the climatic conditions. And really, you're starting from ground zero, tabula rasa site. There's no internet. You know, we have to harness power. There's no water. There's no septic. So this is a real challenge. And we hope to start Suri Wyoming by April. It's in the process of getting clearance. And we need to be sure that we are sensitive and we can work with the community and the environmental agencies and local community to get their blessings to go ahead and to convince them that we're there long term to support green initiatives.
That's incredible. I think we should schedule sooner than later another chapter just specifically on Wyoming. And now you just mentioned that there's basically not enough technology, and it's very, of course, it's very rural place, and this just an innate immersion, complete immersion into the nature. And yet I know how, when I come to your office, Sue, it's incredibly special experience for another particular reason, because it's full of technology. Your screens are the state of the art. I immerse myself in all rounded screens and in the middle of New York and things like that. You obviously embrace technology in full. How do you think technology has changed and enabled architectural design in modern days due to all this incredible developments like the 3D printing that I've seen in the office as well, and this kind of things?
We, as a company, we've tried to embrace technology the last few years, even before COVID. And technology was expensive. teleconferencing wasn't reliable. And if I had it, the client had the same software. But with COVID, I think very early on, COVID made everybody embrace technology. And we went ahead to invest in cloud, in rendering farms in the sky and screens. And what I found out really was that it really kind of stitched together all the disparate offices that we have, and that virtual interaction works as well. And even when the client is, for example, having a different software, we would make sure we have the same software to communicate with the client. But all along, there'll be a separate software that's internal communications. So we'll have an interpreter, our own staff, who will real time on Zoom chat, translating conversations while we are presenting. So in fact, I think it's worked very well, because using Zoom, you can hold the client's attention on a particular slide, or zoom it in, or change to an animation. And we found that it's very effective. So technology is the way to go. What technology does is that it dissolves geography. You can pretty much, through Google Earth and through drone, see the site, right?
Yes.
But you still need the human interaction at some point to connect on a personal level, on a social level, to build trust.
Yes, absolutely. Exactly. There is nothing like energy between people, and human connections are definitely, no matter how technology is advanced, I think for me, extremely important. And I've written a number of captions on it, how even the simple hug or simple, like just touch, a simple, non-technology environment, being in the same place at the same time changes the perception, and changes the mood. So yeah, so please make sure that you and me don't communicate only via technology, that I have to see you guys, you and Link, often.
Sure.
So
I'm
now,
sure we will.
okay, so you're talking in public, so that's the resolution that I have to keep you to. Yeah, I know how much you work. I've known you for so many years. What is your downtime? I know that you sleep quite little, and that's probably even from your architecture days, and as probably most of you do, but you in particular, you can constantly wired. What is your downtime?
The pandemic kind of gave me the luxury of time and to be able to schedule my own time. There are a few passions. It used to be just going to new places. I have a difficult time. I love to read, but I have such short attention span, probably ADD. I could never complete a book, but audiobooks really help. Audiobooks really help, or even just searching for what you're interested on YouTube really helps. Wine, I have a passion for wine, and wine collection, and understanding wine, and visiting vineyards. That's good downtime. And quite recently, reviving cooking, which I haven't done for years, and getting back on the kind of more structured exercise routine and golf, things like that I've never done for many, many years.
That's incredible. That sounds like incredibly healthy and very Renaissance routine. Fantastic. And for cooking, I'll take you up on it. Next time I'm coming over for dinner, you're the one who's going to cook.
Okay, for sure. But I have to say, as relaxation for travel is happening, a lot of those activities are falling to the wayside.
Yes, but that's true. But nevertheless, you've certainly been a world traveler, and you and Link, my dear friend, and your gorgeous wife, have always been on the go. It's always been so difficult to pin you down to one place. What would be your dream destination that you haven't not visited yet? What would be your ticket to go?
Lately, it's not about any particular city or places, but connecting to nature. It has to do with age. Just being able to go to a place and be a bit still and to take it in. And I think, well, Italy is always a go-to place. It's easy, and we go there a lot. usually on the way to New York. I love Italy. And it's not about the new places, it's about revisiting places that you like, that you're familiar with.
Very true.
So
I
not any real particular place. It depends on that moment, if you have
yes.
the bandwidth to relax and take things in.
Very true. I agree with you because I'm a person of a routine and I love happy routine. So if there's a place that I can relate to and gives me a very much of positivity and positive emotions, I should say, my mind and my soul gravitate to this place, even though I might have been there so many times. So I agree with you. If I am to ask you, who, if you want to meet a famous person, an architect, a creator from past, present, or future, what name would come to you?
Does it have to be an architect, really?
No.
Okay,
no.
Well, there are many architects I like to meet, right? I would go much further back. I would say turn of the century architects, some of my favorites, some vernacular architects. I would say like maybe Otto Wagner or Carlos Scarpa or Louis Kahn.
Yes. So it's
more
all
of the, I'm
so,
very intrigued by architects who straddle the threshold between modernity and classicism.
Yes.
And there was a period of time where these architects were trained in the École des Beaux-Arts, which is the classical language architecture.
Yes.
And I'm very fascinated that that period, post-war, World War I, people pivot heavily in industrialization and modern architecture.
Yes.
I'm always interested in that because I'm always interested in the classics.
Yes, and I think classics in general, whether it's literature, whether it's music, whether it's history, philosophy, I think that these are the milestones, the grounding that everything else could be built on. And I always believe in it very much. And even, and this is what I convey to my children as well. So yes, I totally agree with you. And as we said, talking about your likes and hobbies, indulgences, I should say. You just mentioned that you're a wine connoisseur, and that's for sure. And I have enjoyed your company so many times with incredible wines. It's just simply divine. And now you said that you're taking up cooking, which is great, and I'm looking forward certainly. If you were to choose one meal and one wine, what would it be?
Oh, that's so difficult.
Yes.
It depends on the mood, but I tend to go for, I think at the moment, something more elemental, more pure, right?
Yes, yes.
I would say between Japanese or Italian, right? And the wine would be matched with the terroir, the place where I'm eating. There's so many good wines that I love. You know, I could name quite a few, depending on what I'm eating and what the mood I'm feeling.
Yes,
Do I really need to name the wines?
No, you don't have to. We just not at all. And I agree with you that nothing beats good Japanese and good Italians.
Right now, I'm drinking a Pomerol from the right bank.
Okay.
And I feel like it. Some days I go to a Bordeaux. Doesn't need to be a first growth. Or Burgundy. Or Chablis. I'm going to Chablis in a few weeks.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, wonderful. Oh, fantastic. That's great. Lucky you. Wonderful. Well, it's incredible because, you're definitely a Renaissance man. You definitely like the life the way it is. And I'm so happy to hear that the nature and going back to basically basics in the very depths of basics to elevate them is definitely been always your forte. And I'm so happy that you proclaim it through your projects and through your initiatives and with your kindness and care. So thank you so much really for today's conversation, and it's really great talking to you and great to see you. I haven't seen you for a few months, so that was a great opportunity, technologically possible for me as well and for all of us to see you. And I'll just say a few words to our listeners. This episode will be recorded on my IG at Events by Olga. as well as on the YouTube under Conversations with Olga. And I encourage you to follow a CDA architect, to follow Soo Chan, and to indulge in his notion and his vision, and hopefully you will either stay in some of his incredible resorts. Visit definitely Wyoming. I definitely will make plans for it for sure. And I will talk to you more about it when the time comes soon. Thank you so much. Thank you everyone once again for
Thank you everybody for joining. Thank you, Olga, for having me.
It's a pleasure, and have a good evening, everyone. Good morning and good day for people who are in Europe right now. And keep safe. Thank you.
Good night.
Good night. Bye.
Bye.